Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Duane Carey. I want to welcome you to our the Maryland Business for Responsive Government hosted webinar on how to use the Maryland Business Leadership PAC to improve Maryland's business climate. Scott Dorsey, the board chair of MBRG, was going to join us today, but he's gotten pulled away. And so we're going to get started. Like we told you in our different promotional pieces, this is absolutely a 15-minute webinar. We're not going to run over. And we're going to be able to pack in just enough information for you to make some good decisions about this. So the format will be a brief what, why, and how approach. What is a PAC? What is this particular PAC? Why do we need it? And how does it work? And how can you become involved? If anyone's having trouble hearing me, there's a couple of housekeeping items. In the upper left corner, there's an icon that's a telephone handset. If you click on that, there's a slider button in there that you can slide to the right, which will increase the volume. The other thing is, if there are any questions throughout this presentation, in the 4 icons to the top of your toolbar, the third one over is a speech bubble. If you click on that anytime during the webinar, you can type in your question and we will address it during the webinar or at the end of the webinar. And if it's maybe a legal issue that we're not able to quite answer, we'll get you the answer there after the webinar. We have the contact info for everybody, and let's get started. So just real quickly, what is a PAC? It's very simply, well, first of all, it's a political action committee, which is an organization of 2 or more people that aggregates political contributions that really support 3 types of initiatives, either candidates, political parties, or ballot initiatives. In our case, we simply work to support candidates, and we'll talk about that just a little bit further. In Maryland, there are actually 296 PACs duly registered and licensed right now. There are a lot of union PACs, which we're going to talk about in the middle of this presentation. And a lot of industries, specific industries, will have a PAC. So the Realtors Association, the Restaurant Association, right down to things like urologists and dentists and insurance agents. All these kind of vertical markets have a PAC, and they, of course, will focus on a very singular issue. They'll take a look at, maybe 1 or 2 bills really matter to them in any given legislative session. We're a little bit different in that we're the only PAC within Maryland that focuses exclusively on the business climate. And let's define that business climate as our reputation nationally as to whether we are a pro-business state, a business that's friendly, a state that's friendly to business or one that's not. And then also B, a little more logistically and more detailed as someone who practically does actually work with business or actually puts up impediments to business. We support only pro-business candidates. So we don't care what party they're in. We don't care if they're a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent. We simply look at the data. And the way we do that is we look simply at the voting records. And this is where MBRG comes in. Maryland Business for Responsive Government issues an annual report card that looks at all 188 legislators and scores them from 0 to 100% on how they vote on individual bills each year that affect business. If they vote generally in favor of business and the economy and jobs, they score high. If they vote against that, then they score low. So we're going to talk about this just a little bit further as we go here, but that's how we work. So let's get into the why for a minute. This is a graph that shows that the distribution of Fortune 500 companies among Maryland and a lot of our competitor states, much of them to the south, which are considered very pro-business states. In one of our brochures for MBRG, we talk about the fact that Maryland business has literally and figuratively gone south. And it's because a lot of our jobs, a lot of our company owners, a lot of our retirees, they pick up and leave Maryland as soon as they can, and we can't have that. In this case, with Fortune 500 companies, we only have 4 such companies in Maryland. Yet, if you look to Virginia, they've got 19. Now, let's look at the rate at which we create Fortune 500 companies and Virginia does. We have 0.67 Fortune 500 companies per million residents, but Virginia has 2.28 million. That's a dramatic difference. That's 3.5 times. So they're 350% better at creating or retaining Fortune 500 companies than we are. Why is that? It's pretty simple. We're not competitive on taxes, regulations, and lots of other policies that affect business health and therefore economic health. So let me run this by you. If we were to make changes in our state, particularly in our legislature, and we could generate Fortune 500 companies at the same rate as Virginia, here's what that would equate to. We would have 8 more Fortune 500 companies for a total of 4, and a whopping 435,000 more jobs. It's pretty astounding when you think of it. When you think of how much we have to fight so often with the legislature about, I've had so many conversations with individual legislators. Oh, Maryland's definitely pro-business and Virginia has nothing on us. And it's just, the data clearly show it otherwise. And you just want to say, guys, help us out here. If we get more jobs, we have a larger tax base. Everybody wins. It all works for the better. So one of our big issues is shedding this reputation that we have, particularly when it comes to our competitor states. West Virginia, just within the last couple of months, became a right-to-work state. They did so because their economy has been really hurting for a lot of years, and they're going to start picking off even more of our industrial base that we have now. So let me show you some actual numbers to back up what I'm saying. I realize that you can't read the detail on this, and that's okay, because our very next slide that we're going to show you has this detail in it. But here's what I want you to see. This is an annual report. It's a book that's published by the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC. And this book is called Rich States, Poor States. And the theory is we have 50 laboratories, economic laboratories around our country where we can watch and keep track and keep score. And what do policies in those states do to the economy? How do they affect it? The result here, as you see, Maryland is ranked 31st. This is the 2015 data. Maryland's economic performance rank was 31st out of 50 states. Our economic outlook rank was 33rd out of 50. Virginia, on the other hand, looks a heck of a lot better. They're 16th in economic performance and 12th out of 50 in economic output. So let me show you where those numbers come from. So each of these highlighted attributes here on these 2 pages are on this next slide where we're going to have the data. So Maryland in the years 2004 to 2013 actually lost population. We lost 141,000 people, whereas Virginia gained 120,000. I don't know this to be true, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if we lost a good chunk of that when our legislature introduced the millionaires tax and everybody said, bye-bye, I don't need to pay that. We need to get those people back, and we're starting to get some of them back. Our top personal income tax rate is a big deal. We're at 8.95%. Virginia is at 5.75%. That has an enormous impact on where large companies choose to locate because their executive compensation is affected by this. You think a VP, an executive VP at a Fortune 500 company doesn't pay attention to whether they're paying 6% or 9% in personal income tax to the state? We have a death tax. Virginia does not. We have a tougher environment when it comes to the trial lawyers and the tort system. We're in the 60th percentile. Virginia's in the 20th when you look at the rankings. Our workers' comp costs are much higher than Virginia's. And as I mentioned when I said about West Virginia, we are not a right to work. We're actually a forced unionism state, whereas Virginia is a right to work state. And we've now crossed, with regard to right to work, there's now a majority of the states that are right to work and a minority that are not. Even states such as Michigan, the bastion of unions in Detroit, has now gone right to work. So we're at the precipice of falling behind if we don't step it up on some of these policy issues. So staying with the theme of why do we need the business leadership PAC, the competition is brutal. It's huge, and it's very well funded. Just the 2014 gubernatorial election, the amount of money spent just by union PACs was almost $1 million between the primary and the general. Perhaps an even scarier part about that, though, is having spent all of that, they still have $1 million in the bank. And we're 3 years out from the election, so they've got a long way to go to keep piling up the funds. So here's how this all works. You and your business may each contribute up to $6,000 per election cycle. Some people get confused when they hear about PACs and the different limits. The real limit that actually matters is the $6,000 cap to any one PAC. You can contribute to any other PACs, as many PACs as you want. You can contribute to as many individual candidates as you want. You just simply can't go over that $6,000 per 4-year election cycle. This current cycle ends, I think it's the first week in January. And so if someone were to max out their $6,000 starting today, a great way to do it is to divide it up, 2,000 this year, 2,000 next year, and then 2,000 in 2018. A lot of people just do a $6,000 check right off the top. But one of the things we want to really tell all of you on the phone today is any amount of a contribution that's going to help work for good, solid policy in the legislature is very much appreciated. We don't, if you can't do the full 6,000, anything you can do is wonderful. Let me show you where the money went last time and how successful we were. So we had only $35,000 in the bank for the 2014 election. So we had to get very targeted and not spread those funds too thinly. So we targeted 21 races, and we were actually successful in winning 18 of those 21 races for an 86% success rate, which is completely unheard of. The way we did that was we got very granular and very strategic in what we looked at and how we allocated those funds. So we looked first and foremost at the incumbent state legislators who have high roll call scores. Again, this is the report card that MBRG does every year based on actual votes taken. The other thing we did was if an incumbent legislator was a low scorer facing a promising challenger that looked like they would have a chance if we put our limited funds behind them, then we did so. We deviated slightly this past election as well because we had 2 state senators running for county executives. We generally don't get into the county level, but in this case, they had stellar track records as pro-business senators in the legislature. So we got behind them to help ensure that we had pro-business people at the county level. Going forward in the current election cycle, our goal is a 10 times increase in that amount of money to $350,000 rather than $35,000. When we get to that, and we're well on our way as we look at projections, when we get to that, that is going to get the attention of the legislature, not only in the fact that it will cause some changes because of different races we get behind, but when you start having funds that are on the same order as the unions, that changes attitudes in the legislature. It changes attitudes about, gosh, maybe we do need to pay attention to business. Maybe we do need to actually listen to what they have to say. And that's our goal. I mean, that really, that narrows it down to exactly what our objectives are here. We need to make a difference, and we do so with these funds. So we need you to do that. Couple simple steps to do so. Of course, first and foremost, we want you to donate to the extent you can. And then also to tell your colleagues about it. We all have pro-business colleagues, and we need to energize them. They cannot just sit on the sideline. They have to be as activist as you are, and you can light that fire under them better than any of us can. Many ways to contribute. You can certainly send a check. That's what most people do. You can also do so online. There's a PayPal link. You just use a credit card. It's MBRG.org/MBL-PAC. Again, www.mbrg.org/MBL-PAC. And there is actually an option on there. You can click a box if you want to make it a recurring monthly contribution. So any way you want to do it, by God, we'll figure out a way to get it in here. If anyone wants us to set up an EFT through their bank, we can certainly do that as well. So again, let me just reiterate this idea of colleagues. We would love to get them on our list, on our mailing list. If you go to the MBRG website, make sure we have your email address so we can get you on our monthly newsletters and be able to contact you. But also give us the names of some of your colleagues, and we'll reach out to them, and maybe you can even make an introduction. So finally, we do want you to join MBRG, of course, but really our focus for this webinar was purely about the PAC. You can contact us. info@mbrg.org is the email address, and the phone number 410-280-6274. Follow us on any of the social media accounts, both Twitter and Facebook. And it looks like, unless I'm missing, I don't think we've had any questions yet. So if there are any questions beyond this, we're about to wrap up. We promised we would be 15 minutes. I hope we're on 15 minutes. I'm not looking at a clock. Info@mbrg.org. We're happy to get back to you at any time. Thank you very much for your time, and enjoy this beautiful day. Bye-bye.